Spring 1943. Occupied Europe. German aviators, accustomed to the nimble fighters of the Luftwaffe, suddenly encountered a radically different type of enemy aircraft. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt appeared in the skies with a presence unlike any they had faced. Its large radial engine protruded prominently. The fuselage was thick and sturdy, more reminiscent of a transport plane than a dogfighter, and its short, broad wings suggested limited maneuverability. Experienced German pilots initially regarded these aircraft with skepticism, convinced their speed and agility would easily outmatch such cumbersome machines. However, in a matter of months, that doubt gave way to wary respect, then fear, and eventually full recognition that the Americans had deployed a fundamentally new type of fighter. The P-47 was not crafted for elegance or personal heroism. It was built for survivability, firepower, and overwhelming impact, a weapon designed for the industrial scale of modern warfare. By the end of its first year in combat, the Thunderbolt had destroyed some 86,000 enemy targets. May 6, 1941, Farmingdale, New York. Test pilot Lowry Brabham took the controls of a fighter unlike anything previously commissioned by the United States Army Air Forces. The prototype, constructed by Republic Aviation, sat on the runway like a heavy armored vehicle. With a maximum takeoff weight exceeding 8 tons, more than double that of contemporary fighters, it represented a radical departure from conventional design. Alexander Kartveli, the Georgian-born chief designer, had reimagined the fighter based on lessons learned from early air combat in Europe. R-2800 Double Wasp, an 18-cylinder radial engine delivering 2,000 horsepower. Integrating this engine required complex ducting for the turbo supercharger, resulting in the aircraft's distinctive barrel-shaped fuselage, a solution dictated by engineering requirements rather than aesthetics. Its armament was formidable: 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, 4 per wing, collectively carrying up to 3,400 rounds. When fired together, the P-47's guns produced an unparalleled volume of fire among American fighters, second only to the Northrop P-61 Black Widow night fighter. During Brabham's test flight, the Thunderbolt accelerated down the runway with a deliberate heaviness. Despite its size, it lifted off smoothly and climbed steadily, handling flawlessly through 30,000 feet, a ceiling where many lighter fighters struggled. In a dive, the aircraft exceeded 450 miles per hour without losing stability, demonstrating that its massive frame could remain responsive and durable under extreme conditions. The post-flight assessment confirmed Kartveli's expectations. This fighter was revolutionary, not in agility or range, but in survivability, firepower, and overall combat effectiveness. June 1942, Bridgeport, Connecticut. The 56th Fighter Group received their first operational P-47s. Pilots transitioning from lighter, more agile fighters were initially stunned. Captain Robert Johnson, who would later become a top ace, recalled being struck by the aircraft's sheer bulk. Controls were heavy but harmonized with the aircraft's mass, offering precise handling through energy and momentum rather than tight turns. Unlike the German Bf-109, the P-47 dominated the skies through raw speed, diving power, and firepower, rather than agility. Leadership under Colonel Hubert Zemke, who assumed command of the 56th Fighter Group in early 1943, would further refine tactics to leverage the Thunderbolt's unique strengths. Zemke had experience as a combat observer with the Royal Air Force in 1940. Giving him a deep understanding of air engagements against the Luftwaffe. He quickly realized that the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt demanded tactics unlike those of smaller, more maneuverable fighters. German pilots excelled in turning dogfights at medium and low altitudes, where their aircraft could easily outmaneuver most Allied planes. However, the Thunderbolt held distinct advantages at higher altitudes that the Luftwaffe could not counter. Zemke formulated the boom and zoom approach, which became central to P-47 strategy. Pilots would climb to 30,000 feet or above, exploiting the aircraft's high-altitude performance to gain energy and positional superiority. From this vantage, they could dive onto enemy formations at speeds often exceeding 500 miles per hour, unleash the plane's 8-gun armament, then use the momentum to disengage before the opponent could respond. After regaining altitude, the cycle would repeat. Stream of Boeing B-17 flying fortresses over the English Channel at 25,000 feet. The bomber formation extended for miles, with hundreds of 4-engine aircraft advancing into occupied Europe. German radar detected the approach, and Luftwaffe fighters were scrambled from airfields in northern France and Belgium. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s intercepted the bombers near the Belgian coastline. The Luftwaffe had developed tactics over 3 years, exploiting weaknesses in bomber formations and assessing escort fighter capabilities. What they had yet to grasp was the P-47's unique approach to combat. Over the following 3 months, encounters between the Thunderbolt and Luftwaffe fighters increased. A consistent pattern emerged. American pilots avoided turning fights, instead using altitude, speed, and diving performance to their advantage, while the robust Thunderbolts could absorb punishment that would destroy most German aircraft. On June 26, 1943, Lieutenant Robert Johnson, flying P-47D serial number 239006, nicknamed All Hell, experienced a defining moment. While returning from a deep escort mission over Germany, he was isolated and low on fuel when a group of German fighters engaged him. Repeated attacks inflicted extensive damage. His canopy jammed, hydraulic fluid obscured the windshield, control cables were severed, and the fuselage was riddled with over 200 bullet holes. Following 3 weeks of repair, the aircraft returned to combat. This incident underscored the Thunderbolt's extraordinary resilience and sent a powerful message to both Allied and German pilots about American engineering and the aircraft's durability. By October 8, 1943, the Luftwaffe faced a new reality. Major Hans Philipp, an ace with over 200 confirmed victories and one of Germany's most decorated pilots, led an interception mission at 30,000 feet. Encountering Thunderbolts from the 56th Fighter Group, Phillips' Bf-109 struggled in thin air, while the American fighters held altitude superiority. Johnson, flying the same P-47 that survived the June mission, engaged the enemy. Within moments, Phillips' aircraft was destroyed, demonstrating that even elite Luftwaffe pilots were vulnerable. By late 1943, American fighter tactics had fully evolved. The Thunderbolt had earned a reputation for unmatched durability, speed, and high-altitude superiority, altering the dynamics of air combat over Europe. Its effectiveness reshaped both Allied strategy and German perception of aerial warfare. By 1943, P-47 Thunderbolt pilots had shifted tactics, abandoning traditional dogfighting in favor of leveraging their aircraft's strengths in altitude and speed. German fighters struggled to intercept them at 30,000 feet, often forced into defensive maneuvers as Thunderbolts executed high-speed dives. Operational envelope, however, the Thunderbolt was unmatched. As preparations for Operation Overlord intensified in January 1944, Allied planners recognized that achieving air superiority over the Normandy beaches would not be enough. They needed systematic disruption of German logistics. Railways, bridges, supply depots, and troop concentrations had to be neutralized. The P-47's design made it ideal for these high-risk ground attack operations. Its robust 18-cylinder radial engine could sustain significant damage, continuing to operate even after losing cylinders. Thick aluminum armor protected against medium-caliber flak, while its straight wings provided stability for low-level dive bombing and strafing. Its 8.50 caliber machine guns could devastate enemy positions. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Duncan of the 353rd Fighter Group pioneered low-altitude attack techniques in early 1944. A Texan known for his assertive approach, Duncan convinced superiors to test the Thunderbolt as a high-speed ground attacker. Demonstration missions confirmed its ability to strike targets effectively from high altitudes and then climb safely after absorbing enemy fire. By April, all 9 P-47 groups in the 9th Air Force had adopted fighter-bomber roles, training extensively in dive bombing with 500-pound bombs, rocket attacks with M8s, and strafing with the aircraft's full complement of guns. In the weeks leading up to D-Day, Thunderbolts wreaked havoc across northern France. Rail yards burned, bridges were destroyed, supply convoys obliterated, and airfields cratered. The aircraft's resilience saved countless crews. Planes returned with engines missing cylinders, torn control surfaces, punctured fuel tanks, and destroyed hydraulic systems, yet still managed to land safely. Lieutenant Ray Murphy, flying a P-47 named Chief Seattle, experienced this firsthand in January 1944 when his plane sustained hits from 240mm and 120mm shells. Despite serious damage to his engine, landing gear, and hydraulics, he returned 75 miles to base and survived. Chief Seattle continued flying combat missions for months before being lost in a takeoff accident in April 1945. On June 6, 1944, D-Day began. The Allied air campaign unleashed over 14,000 sorties, with 9th Air Force Thunderbolts providing close air support for troops on the beaches, attacking fortifications, disrupting reinforcements, and patrolling the invasion fleet. The Luftwaffe appeared briefly, but was quickly overwhelmed, leaving the Allies with uncontested control of the skies. Years of continuous combat had severely weakened German air and armored capabilities. Veteran pilots were largely gone, killed or captured, leaving new recruits with minimal preparation. Fuel scarcity restricted flight operations, while Allied bombing hampered aircraft production. Wherever German units advanced, the skies were dominated by P-47 Thunderbolts. The Allies' deliberate targeting of transport networks proved devastating. German armored formations often took days to cover distances that normally required hours. Normandy near Rosny, German units trapped between advancing American armored divisions were relentlessly attacked by the 405th Fighter Group from mid-afternoon until late evening. Aircraft conducted continuous strikes in shifts, leaving behind widespread destruction. When American ground troops reached the area the following morning, they found dozens of tanks destroyed, hundreds of vehicles and artillery strewn along miles of road. While casualty reports vary, the impact was indisputable. This approach became standard across France. Retreating German units faced near-constant aerial assaults. By August 1944, encircled German formations were systematically annihilated, with Thunderbolts and other Allied aircraft decimating trapped troops. Joseph Priller, a Luftwaffe ace who had doubted the Thunderbolt's effectiveness in 1943, later acknowledged their superiority. He observed that the aircraft's guns were reliable, never jammed or overheated, and the plane exceeded all expectations as a fighter bomber. Post-war analysis highlighted the scale of destruction. Between D-Day on June 6, 1944, and Victory in Europe Day on May 8, 1945, an 11-month span, P-47s destroyed or damaged roughly 86,000 railcars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored vehicles, and 68,000 trucks across all European theaters where they operated. These figures, based on gun camera footage and pilot reports, are conservative. Actual losses were likely higher due to fires and subsequent ground attacks. Each destroyed vehicle, train, or tank directly limited German mobility, supply, and combat effectiveness. The resulting Battle of the Bulge involved 600,000 American troops. For several days, poor weather grounded Allied aircraft, allowing German advances. When skies cleared on December 23, P-47s quickly reasserted dominance. They patrolled the front constantly, striking convoys, interdicting roads, and targeting reinforcements. An example of Thunderbolt resilience occurred on December 17, 1944, when Lieutenant Leslie Bowes, piloting a P-47 nicknamed Blonde Trouble near Note, Germany, survived a mission despite his aircraft being hit by shrapnel from a bombed convoy. He managed to fly back and land safely with only minor injuries, demonstrating the durability of the plane under combat conditions. The Luftwaffe's last major attempt to counter Allied air superiority, Operation Bodenplatte, on January 1, 1945, destroyed over 200 Allied aircraft on the ground, including numerous P-47s. However, American production replaced losses rapidly, while Germany suffered irreplaceable pilot and aircraft casualties. By late January, the Ardennes Bulge had collapsed, and Allied forces resumed their advance into Germany. Thunderbolts returned to systematically targeting German infrastructure, striking bridges, marshalling yards, and depots. In January 1945, missions flown from K-29 airfield in Belgium contributed to the ongoing campaign, further crippling German mobility and supply lines. During World War II, coordination between air and ground forces reached a new level of precision. Thunderbolt attacks exceptionally lethal, contributing to rapid Allied advances in the final months of the conflict. German forces were forced to retreat across the Rhine, and on some days, Allied troops covered up to 50 miles. Thunderbolts hunted targets throughout Germany, destroying horse-drawn artillery columns, aircraft hidden in forests, and supply trains before they could reach frontline units. Despite growing threats from desperate German soldiers firing at low-flying planes, the P-47's rugged construction often allowed pilots to return safely. Lieutenant Cliff's Surrey, for example, was hit by a 20 or 37mm round while strafing near Saarmund on November 20, 1944. His engine sustained serious damage and oil sprayed across the windscreen, yet he managed to fly 125 miles back to base with the guidance of his wingman. In April 1945, Allied forces penetrated deep into German territory, and Thunderbolt pilots continued daily missions. Lieutenant First Class Raymond Knight of the 346th Fighter Squadron repeatedly led attacks on enemy airfields, flying his P-47D "Oh Johnny" under heavy fire. On April 25th, ground fire fatally struck his aircraft and he was killed. Knight posthumously received the Medal of Honor, one of only 2 P-47 pilots ever awarded the United States' highest military decoration. Unlike earlier fighters designed for speed and maneuverability, the Thunderbolt prioritized firepower, durability, and pilot survival. It was heavier and less agile, but could absorb severe damage and still return home. This approach allowed experienced pilots to fly multiple tours and damaged planes to be repaired and redeployed. German fighters, in contrast, were fragile. A single hit could force a pilot to bail out, magnifying the psychological impact. Experienced Luftwaffe ace Erich Hartmann noted that the P-47 could endure an extraordinary amount of punishment, earning respect from even the most seasoned German pilots. Over time, what had been a dismissive nickname, the Flying Barrel, was replaced with admiration for its role as a highly effective fighter bomber. After the war, the Thunderbolt remained in frontline service with the U.S. Air Force until 1949, and other countries continued operating it into the 1950s. The Brazilian Air Force, for instance, earned a Presidential Unit Citation in the 1980s for its successful P-47 missions in Italy. Units like the 56th Fighter Group remained loyal to the Thunderbolt, achieving 677.5 aerial victories and 311 ground kills, while losing 128 aircraft. Leading aces, such as Colonel Francis Gabreski, praised the plane's spacious cockpit, reliability, and survivability, considering it the most effective fighter bomber of the war. Today, surviving P-47s are preserved in museums worldwide, with a few still flying at air shows. Thunderbolt II. Developed in the 1970s for close air support, the A-10, nicknamed Warthog, embraces the same principles: heavy armament, reinforced armor, survivability above all, and the capacity to endure damage while remaining operational. In combat, the P-47 excelled. From the Normandy landings to the fall of Germany, it systematically disrupted enemy logistics and decimated ground targets. In roughly 11 months, Thunderbolts destroyed an estimated 86,000 targets, including 68,000 trucks, 9,000 locomotives, and 6,000 armored vehicles. Each destroyed truck represented crucial supplies, food, ammunition, fuel, medical equipment that never reached German front lines. Every train that failed to move due to damaged locomotives slowed reinforcements and delayed evacuations. The Thunderbolt's relentless attacks broke the operational capacity of armored divisions, reducing once formidable units to shadows of their former strength. German pilots initially derided the P-47 as a flying barrel, mocking its bulky appearance. Captain Vero, who first coined the term in 1943, survived the war, but never returned to combat after being wounded in 1944. In retrospect, even he recognized the aircraft's devastating effectiveness. Its ungainly shape concealed extraordinary firepower and resilience, forcing enemy forces to adapt under constant threat. The nickname itself transformed, from derision to respect, even fear, as the aircraft consistently destroyed critical supplies and vehicles. Strategists studied its campaigns, noting how air superiority combined with deliberate attacks on logistics could paralyze even well-equipped ground forces. The principles of targeting enemy supply lines and reserves before they reach the front, a key component of deep battle doctrine, were validated by the P-47's operations in Europe. The Thunderbolt's legacy demonstrates that intelligent trade-offs in aircraft design, coupled with focused operational strategy, can yield profound results on the battlefield. During World War II, the ability of a fighter to survive often proved more crucial than its outright speed. Pilots quickly discovered that skillful maneuvering and tactics could outweigh raw aircraft performance. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke's boom and zoom strategy provided a framework for P-47 Thunderbolt pilots to leverage their plane's strengths while minimizing vulnerabilities. By engaging in high-altitude energy fighting, they neutralized the superior turning abilities of German fighters. Steep diving attacks converted the aircraft's weight and engine power into lethal weapons. This approach transformed the Thunderbolt from an ordinary turning fighter into a formidable energy-based combatant. The 56th Fighter Group's decision to stick with the Thunderbolt, even as nearly every other 8th Air Force unit switched to Mustangs, reflected profound pilot confidence. These aviators had logged daily combat sorties for over 2 years and possessed an intimate understanding of the aircraft's capabilities and limits. Their insistence on continuing with the Thunderbolt speaks volumes about the plane's dependability. Praise rather than criticism. The historical importance of the Thunderbolt extends beyond its performance statistics. It embodied an American philosophy of warfare and industry: build planes that are heavy, rugged, and reliable, prioritizing capability and resilience over peak performance. This approach proved effective. Over 15,600 Thunderbolts were produced, a testament to American industrial might. Each aircraft relied on thousands of components manufactured across the United States. From aluminum refined from bauxite mines, steel forged in Pittsburgh, and synthetic rubber, to engines from Pratt & Whitney and precision instruments from specialized workshops. These pieces were coordinated, shipped, and assembled at Republic Aviation plants in Farmingdale, New York, and Evansville, Indiana. The logistical, organizational, and workforce management feat required to produce thousands of sophisticated aircraft under wartime conditions equaled the technical achievement of the design itself. Each completed P-47 symbolized a convergence of American economic power and military capability. Although German manufacturers created highly effective designs, they could not match U.S. production capacity. The Focke-Wulf FW-190, widely regarded as Germany's best piston-engined fighter, saw 20,000 units built over the entire war, more than the Thunderbolt, but over a longer period. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 reached over 33,000 units across 6 years and multiple variants. German aviators faced ever-increasing numbers of skilled opponents flying robust, well-armed aircraft. Attrition heavily favored the Allies. Veteran German pilots were lost, replacements were undertrained, and aircraft quality declined due to material shortages and simplifications. The Luftwaffe entered a downward spiral it could never recover from. The Thunderbolt played a crucial role in this process. Its durability and heavy armament allowed pilots to survive multiple missions while inflicting significant damage on enemy forces. Aircraft frequently returned to base even after sustaining serious battle damage, allowing repairs and reuse. Over time, this compounded the combat effectiveness of Allied air forces. The P-47 became one of the most effective fighters of the war, not because it excelled in every performance metric, but because it achieved its mission goals with consistent reliability. From the air, the Thunderbolt carried out relentless operations. In an 11-month period, pilots destroyed around 86,000 targets, Breaking that down, the aircraft eliminated roughly 7,800 targets per month, 258 per day, or about 10 per hour continuously. Initially derided as a flying barrel by German pilots, the Thunderbolt ultimately earned a reputation as a devastating instrument of destruction. Its combination of resilience, firepower, and tactical employment contributed directly to the collapse of the Third Reich's air capabilities, proving that sometimes the most unassuming designs can have the greatest impact on history.